In any room you walk into, a hierarchy forms, and it forms within seconds. It's not written down on some org chart, but it's the thing that really determines who gets heard and who gets ignored. Today, we're going to map out this hidden power structure.
So, have you ever been on a so-called flat team? It's a great idea in theory, right? No bosses, everyone's equal, but it never really feels that way, does it? There's always an informal structure that pops up. The question is, why? And here's the simple, counterintuitive truth. It's because every single room has a ranking. It just does. It forms almost instantly, and it's totally subconscious. And this isn't some failure of management or a problem to be solved. It's just a fundamental part of how we as humans operate in groups.
So let's start with the signal here. The key is understanding that this ranking is unspoken. We're used to thinking about hierarchy as a formal chart, right? But the power structure that actually matters is invisible, and it's based on something way more primal.
See, this is basically wired into us. It's an old instinct. Groups that could figure out quickly who was competent and who could lead, well, they had a much better shot at survival. That ancient software is still running in our brains today, constantly scanning the room, trying to sort everyone. And this really gets to the heart of why this matters. Pretending that status doesn't exist doesn't make you enlightened. It just makes you blind. You end up playing a game without knowing the rules, and that's a huge strategic disadvantage. Okay, so if this ranking is invisible, how in the world is it communicated? Well, it happens through a really consistent pattern of signals, a kind of silent language of status that, deep down, we all instinctively know how to read. And that language has a name: status signaling. Think of it as a constant nonverbal broadcast. Your posture, your tone of voice, even when you choose to speak, it's all sending signals that tell everyone where you think you fit in the pecking order and where you think they should place you. And these signals aren't vague, they're incredibly specific. Just look at the patterns here. High-status signals are all about calm, a measured pace of speaking, a relaxed and still posture. High-status people are comfortable with silence. They often wait and speak last. Low-status signals are the exact opposite, talking fast, fidgeting, a kind of nervous energy, and that constant need to jump in and fill any silence. Now, here's the wild part. Our brains process all of this in milliseconds. It's subconscious. Before anyone's even talked about the agenda for the meeting, the group has already used these signals to sketch out a rough draft of who's in charge. So that brings us to the game. How does all this subconscious signaling and ranking actually play out in our day-to-day lives? Well, it assigns you a role. And that role can be way more powerful or way more limiting than any official job title you have. Think about it. On paper, your business card might say senior analyst, but in the room, based on the signals you're sending, the group might have assigned you the role of the workhorse, the person who just gets things done. Or maybe you're the critic or the visionary. And it's that assigned role, not your title, that dictates how much weight your words actually carry. And if you consistently send the same signals, that reputation starts to harden. You get typecast. If you're always signaling deference and agreement, the group will cast you in that role, and they'll expect you to play it. It becomes very predictable and very hard to break out of. So, what happens if you just ignore all of this? What's the cost of being unaware of this game? Well, it's huge, and it quietly puts a ceiling on the careers of a lot of incredibly talented people. When you're blind to these dynamics, your work, even your best work, just doesn't seem to land with the same impact. You get passed over for things you know you're qualified for, and you might experience that classic, incredibly frustrating moment. You share a good idea, and crickets. Then, 10 minutes later, someone who signals higher status says the exact same thing, and suddenly it's brilliant. It really all boils down to this. You can have the best idea in the entire world, but if you're sending low-status signals when you deliver it, the room just won't be able to hear it. The signals you send are basically the gatekeepers of your influence. Okay, so what's the alternative? Do you have to become some kind of master manipulator? Absolutely not. The real edge here, the real advantage, comes from something much simpler: clear-eyed awareness. Let's be really clear. This isn't about faking it till you make it. It's not about putting on some persona that isn't you. It's about shifting from being an unconscious player in this game to a conscious observer. It's about understanding the dynamics so you can choose how you want to show up. And there's a pretty simple framework to start doing this. Step 1 is to just observe. In your very next meeting, just watch. Who interrupts other people? Who gets interrupted? When a tough question is asked, who does everyone's eyes dart towards? Step 2 is to use what you see to map out the real power structure. Then, and only then, you can move to step 3. You can start to consciously calibrate your own signals, maybe by slowing down your speech just a little, or holding your posture a bit more calmly, to match the kind of influence you want to have.
We've looked at the signal, we've broken down the pattern, and we've talked about the game. So now, to finish, let's turn this whole lens of analysis around and point it back at ourselves with a few final questions. And be honest with yourself. Forget your job title for a second. Based purely on how people act around you, how they listen, who they defer to, where do you actually stand in the informal ranking of your most important group? Now, look around you. Who in your world has influence that goes way beyond their formal position on the org chart? Identifying who those people are and just watching the signals they send is one of the fastest ways to understand how power really works where you are. And finally, this is the most important question. Right now, in every meeting, every conversation, every email, what signal are you broadcasting to the world? Is it the one you mean to send? And is it helping you? Or is it holding you back?